For 18 years, the Diaries has been in the business of getting you out there, doing what you love with the people you love, pushing you to maybe see a different way or a different path through life, and realizing that others have done this before. We know when we tell stories about people doing hard things, chasing dreams, working for their communities, and being curious, it begets more of that. It's infectious. Good things can happen. Right now, we're doing that with the show. We need you to keep this project going. That's the reality of the modern internet. To keep inspiration alive and the thoughtful stories and the laughter going. Some of you have come forward and stepped up and joined the Diaries Plus, but we need more of you. We need a bigger community saying this kind of project matters in this world. Diaries Plus is the tool that we make that happen with. So please consider becoming a member of Diaries Plus. There's a link in the show notes. You become a part of something. You become part of the inspiration, part of the creativity and the community, and we thank you for that. And I think we can build the show into the powerful thing it's been and the powerful thing it's going to become together. The link is in the show notes or on our website, dirtbagdiaries.com. Here's to more Type 2 fun. Here's to being part of something positive.
Fitz, welcome back, man.
Thanks, Marco. It's good to be back.
How was your trip?
Oh, dude, it was so good. It was the longest that Becca and I have been away from the Dirtbag Diaries in like 15 years, probably. So to have that much space was rad. The boys did so well. I felt like I was like in that moment where I kind of like set the table, and it allowed them to kind of explore this experience, and it was super cool.
Did you manage any good hikes out there?
Dude, we did a lot of good hikes out there. We mostly rode bikes, but Wiley, we were in this one place, Briasson, and it has all these old forts that are like from 600, 700 years old to kind of 200 years old, and they're way up on the hills. And his goal for the week was to visit all of them. And so we would huff it up there and then like explore these really cool forts way up in the Alps. It was rad. You know, we don't typically like hike that much, but it made me remember why I liked hiking.
So our story today focuses on Poppy and Thea Wardley, a pair of identical twins from England taking on the Pacific Crest Trail. Now, I could give you some numbers and stats on why a through hike of the PCT is such a massive undertaking, but I am in no way an expert in this field. I don't think I've ever done an actual through hike. So I recruited a professional hiker and friend of the show, the Real Hiking Viking.
My name is Jabba, the Real Hiking Viking. That is my trail name, and that is my internet alter ego, so to speak, or rather, my alter ego is actually my real name, which is Thomas Gathman, and I am a professional adventurer and long distance through hiker. I kind of stopped counting my specific, mileage years ago, but I'm certainly over the 30,000 mile threshold of miles backpacked in the U.S. I've done some backpacking outside of the U.S. as well, including the Jordan Trail from the Red Sea to Syria in the Middle East. I have a total love relationship with the Pacific Crest Trail. In fact, for 3 years in a row, from 2015, 16, and 17, I was on that trail every summer for many, many months at a time. I mean, it's 2,600 miles. That isn't over in the blink of an eye. You're there for, spring, summer, and fall, depending on the direction you're going and the pace you're going. The consensus on the Pacific Crest Trail, when comparing it to the Appalachian Trail or the Continental Divide Trail, the Triple Crown Trails, I would say the overwhelming majority of people that have been on these Triple Crown Trails would say the Pacific Crest Trail is the cushiest or the easiest. And like saying the term easiest, I find it to be a little laughable because there's nothing easy about any of these trails. Like, it is difficult to through hike in general. Like, it is difficult to do. There are a multitude of obstacles that even just to get on the trail, for starters, but you can get injured, you could run out of money, you can get sick, you could hit weather. There are hurdles every day out there. Like, just persisting to walk every day is its own challenge and hurdle. So like, 25% of the people that start these trails typically end up finishing. So 75% of the people are, SOL. They're quitting for whatever reason. And I don't even want to gloss over this. Whoever you're hiking with to start, your relationship changes a lot, dramatically, for good or for worse.
Poppy and Thea have practically been attached at the hip since they were born. They do everything together and know every detail of each other's lives. The paradigm of their relationship has been consistency. But when that consistency is broken, Poppy and Thea go to the farthest lengths, embarking on an adventure on the other side of the world, just to reconnect with each other. I'm Marco Seiler Gonzalez.
I'm Fitz Cahal.
You're listening to the Dirtbag Diaries.
People always assume that as identical twins especially, will be really competitive with each other. But I just think for me and Thea, we really weren't. I mean, I was constantly looking up to her and I wanted to be just like her, but everyone always asks, are you competitive? But no, we really weren't. And I think that may be quite rare in twins.
That was Poppy on your left there. We decided to pan their voices because they sound extremely similar. So here's Thea on your right.
Growing up, Poppy was just my best friend. It's quite a unique experience having a twin, having someone that looks exactly the same as you and also shares all of your memories and experiences, like creates a very close bond that is maybe a bit more than sisterhood. And I think maybe like that closeness and that similarity for other sets of twins that's where it leads to like them not liking each other. But I think for us, it went in the other direction where we just have this like love for each other. It's like having like a built-in best friend for life. And I think she's awesome. Like I look up to her so much. We both grew up in Surrey, which is just on the outskirts of London. So there weren't a ton of green spaces around where we lived, but we sort of fostered a love of nature through some running routes and like our daily dog walks. And then every holiday was just spent in like UK national parks, having fun and getting outdoors.
Our mum's like a really big wild swimmer and our dad's a really big rock climber. So growing up, they always had these challenges in the outdoors. So that sort of sense was really familiar to us. Like, I really want to climb this grade. I really want to swim across this lake. And then the concept of working towards that goal in the outdoors, that was like a really familiar thing to us. And conversations around the dinner table were always, what do I want to get done next?
Thea and Poppy were driven academically too. Thea pursued an undergraduate degree at Leeds University, and Poppy was interested in medicine. Now, in the UK, that means taking prerequisite classes in high school and then 5 years of medical school. Since their interests were different, so were the universities they chose.
I think when Poppy and I went to different universities, it was hard for us. Like, as you say, we had spent our whole lives like having these shared experiences, and then all of a sudden we were having different experiences. And I was like, hang on a second, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know your friends. I don't know, what you've been up to.
And it was like the first time in our life that we weren't sort of having the exact same experience. It was also COVID. So we were locked down at our colleges, which brought its own challenges in itself. But then on top of that, we couldn't travel to go see each other. And we just sort of were confined to these sort of weekly phone calls, which I remember finding quite hard, but was probably good for us to go and learn how to be a part of it.
Poppy and Thea spent the first few years of their studies through COVID. It was isolating, and by the time Thea was ready to graduate, Poppy still had at least 2 more years of schooling left.
We had been having quite a lot of conversations about medicine and just life in general, and sort of like what she wanted to get out of her life. Poppy is like the most motivated, strong-minded person. So when she started to tell me that she was thinking about dropping out of medicine, I took that quite seriously. I knew that she must have been struggling if her reaction was to sack it all in together.
The difference between my perception of this doctor in my head and what the reality was, I mean, at the time in the UK, was just quite different. And doctors are overworked and underpaid and stressed, and being in that environment when you're training to be in that position was definitely something that was playing on my mind. And I just think for a long time I knew that I was getting quite exhausted by it. And I had this idea of a big adventure in my head. So even when I felt like medicine was the right thing for me, I think I needed to take a step back and justify what the sacrifice of medicine would look like, and whether that meant I could still sort of go on big adventures if I wanted to. So that's when I started to think about dropping out.
I remember she called me when she called me to tell me that she had dropped out. I think it was just relief, honestly, because I had seen that she was struggling for a couple months before, and I knew the kind of mental rut that she was in. So when she told me she had dropped out, I think she had made the right decision. And then also selfishly, I had just graduated university, so I was like planning on going traveling. So she sort of followed up with that of like, well, now I have the year, and maybe we could do something cool together. And then, you know, the imagination started.
I think adventure in that sense of the big, like, remote adventure, the self-sufficiency, you can't get anything like that where we're from, because everything's so close. You can't go that far before you get to a road and a town. So yeah, that sort of sense of adventure I don't think ever really came into our childhood in the same way. I had heard about the PCT from a friend who did the hike a few years ago, and I had read Wild by Cheryl Strayed about the lady who hikes some of the PCT, and I knew sort of that transformation that she went on mentally and emotionally, and the idea of it had been in the back of my mind for a long time. And then when I decided to drop out, I knew that I needed a bit of an adventure and a bit of a challenge. So when I was thinking about what that next step was going to be, and when people were asking me, what are you going to do next? It sort of started gradually coming to the forefront of my mind. And I just knew that if I worded it right, I could convince Thea to do it with me.
But in the book, Cheryl Strayed, I think she does just about over 1,000 miles. So I called up Poppy and I was like, okay, like, this trail sounds kind of interesting. Like, what section are you thinking of doing? Because Cheryl Strayed only does a section. And Poppy was like, I think we should go for the whole thing. And I was like, of course she wants to go for the whole thing.
I think I just said, come on, I think we can do the whole thing. To me, there was just never a question like, we should try the whole thing. But I remember being so stressed and decision fatigued because we were trying to find out as much as we could about the trail, reading blogs, watching YouTube videos, and everyone seemed to get across the message that if you don't have this particular bit of gear, you're not going to make it. So every decision seemed to open up a whole new can of worms, like sleeping system, water system. It was all so new to us. We had no idea where to start. We had nothing. So we just were starting from scratch. And then we had the whole visa and permit process, because it's a lottery to get the permit, which initially we didn't get. And then we ended up getting a permit in the second round. But the permit was for the beginning of March, which is so early to start the PCT.
And then obviously we were both working full time, like desperately trying to work as much to get money for the trip. We were sort of focusing on the bare bones of what we needed, which was like the permits and then like a tent and a sleeping bag and a sleeping mat. And maybe we weren't looking into what it would actually mean to hike. I remember like my dad saying, So what is California going to look like? And I was like, I have no idea. We didn't have a proper grasp on maybe like what the trail would actually look like. I think we focused more on like what we need to get us to the start line, because we didn't have a ton of time to prepare. That I remember stepping off the bus into Campo, which is the town at the Mexican border, and just being like, oh my God, I can't believe we're here. I looked around and all you can see is just red rock and shrubbery and sand just all the way into the horizon. And then behind you is the like 10-foot wall that splits the desert in two. And it was just so surreal. It was all so overwhelming and new to the both of us.
I'd never seen anything like it before. And I was just so terrified. I was like, can't believe I just have to walk across this. And there's like a lot of hikers at the border as well. And from all the planning and preparation, you just get there and think, oh my gosh, everyone else is so much more prepared than me. They're going to make it. And there's this statistic that only a third of hikers finish. So I remember that in the camp the night before, everyone just sort of looking around and being like, who's going to make it? Who's going to be the ones that finish? And I don't think me and Thea thought it was going to be us at all.
It was dinner time, maybe like 6:30, 7:30 p.m., like the night before we were supposed to start. And like the conversation in camp was just about this storm. And Poppy and I were like, storm? What storm? Like, we hadn't even looked at any sort of weather map, because this sounds so stupid in hindsight, but during all of our planning, I knew that the first 700 miles was Californian desert. I had heard the word desert and thought, oh, so it's hot. Everyone knows a desert is hot.
We walked into the bathroom in the campground, and this lady comes in, full down jacket trousers, and she's brushing her teeth and asking us what we're going to do about the storm. And just says, there's no way I'm touching it. I'm going back to San Diego this morning. And me and Thea just looked at each other, and no words were spoken, but we were just in absolute despair. We were like, we don't have that option. At least in our heads, we didn't. There was a bit of naivety and a bit of a disbelief that there actually could be bad weather in the desert, because we'd not heard about it. I think the whole time we thought it was never going to hit us, and we were from England and we knew what bad weather was like, and everyone must be over exaggerating, and that we could just keep going. So that's what we decided to do.
Early March, that is insanely early to me. I do have a lot of experience backpacking in wintry conditions and dead of winter conditions, and that's probably what anyone starting in early March is going to experience at varying points and varying degrees along their hike. I mean, if you're not prepared for that, then you're basically a fool to start that early. You're gonna see freezing cold temps. You're gonna see wind chills below zero, is my guess, especially at higher altitudes and above tree line. You're gonna see snow, fresh snow, and old snow. Fresh snow on old snow. So. I mean, I honestly advise people not to start that early when people are like, oh, I want to start in March. I assume that you'll make smart decisions when you're on trail, given what the weather reports are saying. I mean, you are living by weather reports, not just daily, but almost hourly at times. Because if it were me and I were starting that early, man, I would be outfitted for a winter expedition. I would say I'm a professional. I'm an expert. There are certain hurdles that you just don't want to be dealing with because the risk, the risk assessment is too great. So with these greenhorn heroes of ours, the learning curve is exceptionally steep.
Yeah, I mean, the first day was amazing. Everything I had hoped for. We pushed like 19 miles that first day, which was so much better than we thought we were going to do. And the weather was fine. We talked the whole time. It was blue skies and the most amazing scenery that we'd never seen before, either side of us. And we just got through the day. And I remember setting up camp at the end of the day, watching the sunset with Poppy and thinking, this is just the perfect first day with my sister in the outdoors. All thoughts of a storm were not in my head. All of the struggles of planning and visas and permits completely gone. I was like, this is what I'm here for. This is what I wanted. I just wanted to spend some time in the outdoors with my sister. But the second day, I just remember this cold wind hitting us first thing in the morning, and just knowing that was the storm, and this storm that we had been convincing ourselves that wasn't going to come potentially would come. So we started hiking. I remember dropping my phone early on that day and smashing it, which was a bit of a nightmare because that's a bit of a lifeline on the trail. Your phone has nav on it and it has all of, contacts and everything. We stopped for lunch and put all of our clothes out to dry. And we're talking about the storm and the stress of the first 2 days. And get up to start hiking again and completely forgot we'd left our things out to dry. So we get about 2 miles down the road and Thea's like, oh my God, we've just left all of our clothes behind. And at this point on the trail, an extra 4 miles to hike is like the difference between exhaustion and being fine, because we weren't that fit at all. So we ended up having to turn around to grab our stuff. And I remember saying to Thea, let's just leave it. But it was like 150 quid's worth of gear. So she was like, no, Poppy, we're actually going to go get that. And then I think as well, another worry came when we got to a road crossing and we saw a bunch of PCT hikers getting into a taxi. And they called over to us and they were like, we're heading back to San Diego because the storm's coming. And we just looked at each other like, God, it just seemed like everything was pointing us back to the start. But we were so determined. We didn't want to go back to the start. We had given everything to be there and we didn't want to stop on the first day, which sounds a bit naive saying it. But we were just committed. So by the third day, the weather had turned. The strong wind had turned into a pretty thick and fast snowstorm. So we had all the layers we had on, which was basically t-shirts, some long sleeve pajama tops, a down jacket with no hood, and a little waterproof. So just hiking wearing those, getting completely soaked in seconds. And the snow was coming down so heavy. And it was just nothing like anything we'd experienced in the UK. Like the snowflake was so thick and instantly forming a layer on the floor. Snow, like in the UK, doesn't even settle on the ground. But here it was like in 2 minutes we were trudging through it and already our feet were wet. We hadn't even considered that the campgrounds would still be closed in March. But we got to Burnt Rancheria and there was just a big sign that greeted us that said, opens 1st of April. And I remember just both of us just sitting down like, this is the final blow. Like we're in the pits. Just all of our hope sort of drained out of our minds. And I just remember feeling completely defeated by that point and cold and just upset.
The Diaries is supported by Oboz Footwear. Oboz, outside of Bozeman. That's what it means, right? And the company uses the Montana mountains like a giant R&D lab. So whether you're looking for a classic low-profile shoe or a rugged off-trail hiker, Oboz has figured it out by testing it in this rugged landscape. The Bridger Peak is their pinnacle product engineered for hikers seeking the highest level of protection and stability. The all-leather uppers feature Vibram and Gore-Tex technology for the toughest trails. Or maybe the Highlight is more your style, designed for those who seek a lower profile hiker with all-terrain performance and aim to be on their feet from dusk till dawn. That's kind of my style. The Highlight has a unique blend of recycled and bio-based materials and a range of color options. To find your next pair of footwear, check out obosfootwear.com/lovehiking. Obos Footwear. Love hiking. Are you ready to disappear into the wild for a few days? I sure am. Always. Kuwat's new deck rooftop platform rack turns your vehicle into a mobile base camp, ready for bikes, cargo boxes, rooftop tents, and everything else you need for a weekend. Built from burly aluminum and steel, the deck handles up to 300 pounds of gear, and the integrated T-channels let you mount just about anything, from kayaks to recovery boards. The deck installs easily, rides quietly, and gives you additional storage space for gear to keep you outside longer. If you're like me, you don't have to pack like Tetris anymore. Make your vehicle's roof your launch pad for adventure. Visit Kuwat.com to learn more. Kuwat, because you love your gear. Support for the diaries comes from Terns. Terns After Sun skincare products are formulated to support skin recovery from sun and environmental exposure, things like pollution, wind, cold, and more. While sunscreen helps prevent UV damage, the Terns products support skin health. They're powered by a complex made from marine ingredients that work to rebalance inflammatory pathways. And that's a bunch of science that I don't totally understand, but I gotta say, it's a simple habit that's started to make my skin feel better, especially this summer. I've been outdoors a ton. May Day is my go-to when I get more sun than expected. It minimizes peeling and replenishes moisture, which means my skin feels better quicker. And Terns Everyday Lotion, well, I use it every single day. My skin, it just loves it, drinks it up. Seriously, I never thought I'd be doing skincare, but I am on board after Terns. After Sun should not be an afterthought. Use the code DIRTBAG to get 25% off your first order at Terns.com. We'll put a link in the show notes, and you can try Terns for yourself. So Washington State, where we live, has one of the most incredible state park systems in the country, full stop. Every year we pull out the atlas, we take a look at where we could go, and we pick a new place. One year, it was Lake Curlew State Park out by Republic. There was incredible mountain biking around there, and the lake right there was where I taught my kids to fish. It's rad. The Washington Discover Pass is your key to accessing Washington State Park's recreation sites, natural areas, and more. When you purchase a Discover Pass, you aren't just buying a parking pass, you're helping care for public lands. You directly support conservation and recreation opportunities. You're keeping bathrooms open and trails maintained. You're caring for forests and protecting seashores. And the Discover Pass helps us protect and enjoy them together. So if you're out of state, come visit. Check out the system. Buy the pass. And if you're here, buy the pass because it helps us enjoy these places and keep them open. Get your Discover Pass at discoverpass.wa.gov. That's discoverpass.wa.gov.
So I pulled out the map and I remember seeing like 6 miles down the road a restaurant. And I probably didn't look at it when we first looked at the map that day because we weren't really budgeting for restaurants. So I normally overlooked them. But I saw this restaurant and I was like, let's aim for here because if nothing else, we can just get like an hour of warmth and then we can like figure out a plan and we can go from there. So we put our heads down and we walked to this restaurant, longest 6 miles of my life. So we get to this restaurant and we go in to ask for water, and the owner is this sort of elderly French guy, thick French accent. So he lets us in and pretty miserable about giving us some water and us not getting any food or anything. But I think he could tell he was not going to get anything out of us. And we just stood in the corner, our clothes dripping onto the floor, creating a puddle, just like looking around at all the couples having their nice meals. And I was just desperate to be them and not in our position. So he comes back with our water and there's nothing else, there's nothing left for us to do. So we just turn around and start walking.
and the rain and the snow's still coming down. And Thea turns to me and she says, "Why don't we just ask if there's somewhere to stay in the restaurant?" And I remember being quite annoyed at her. I thought, why are you being so optimistic? That's not going to work. There's nowhere to stay in a restaurant. Like, you can ask him if you want, but I'm not doing that.
It's 3 p.m. Like, we've just walked 22 miles, which is the furthest we'd ever walked. Our stuff is soaked through. I remember going up to the guy and being like, "Please say yes, because this is really this is a lifeline." So I went up to him and he sort of took a moment to think, and then eventually he said in his thick French accent, "I think there's somewhere you could stay," and he shuffled us outside to a back door, and in this door was like a little laundry cupboard, maybe like 2 by 1 meters, and it had a boiler and like stacks of laundry. And he was like, "If you need somewhere to stay, you can stay here." We just set out our sleeping mats, and it was so warm in there because there was like the heat of the boiler. We had this little travel chess set, so we tried to learn chess, which didn't last. I was so grateful. It was so warm. It was so swelteringly warm in there, but it was such a nice contrast to the outside that it was just perfect. It was a perfect little spot to stay. And we ended up staying for 3 nights. 3 nights and 2 days.
How did that kind of experience set the tone for kind of when you guys kicked off on the trail again? Like, how are you guys feeling?
I think we were feeling pretty buoyed by the whole experience, just with a bit of confidence that the people around you, when they heard what you were trying to do, were just so open to helping. We were proved right time and time again. People were just so happy to help, which is hard to believe until you're there and experiencing it. And I think there was also that confidence of we knew we'd encounter problems, and now we knew exactly what the problems were and that we could deal with them. So there was less of the fear of the unknown after that experience.
I think for me, the whole experience was a huge learning curve. There were more storms that hit us as we went through California. Pretty much every other weekend there was a storm, but each time we grew in confidence. We became better at checking the weather. We went to the next town and bought more appropriate clothing. So it was definitely a learning experience in preparedness. I almost feel like the worst had happened. Like any other challenges we had from there, we could overcome.
I feel like a learning curve is kind of like an understatement for what Poppy and Thea experienced in that first stretch. I don't know, it sounds more like a learning vertical or something. But after 700 miles, Poppy and Thea were closing in on the Sierra Nevada mountain range, which is really tough with an early season start. Again, here's Jabba.
So hitting the Sierra Nevada mountains for June, you're in for a whole different style of backpacking. When you get up in the morning in the desert, you can get up whenever you want and you can hike whenever you want, more or less. You know, you don't have to change the way you backpack if weather's no consideration. But in the Sierra, you might have to get up at like 2 a.m. to start hiking and getting your miles in before the sun starts melting the top layers of snow, because you're using either crampons or micro spikes and an ice axe. And when that snow gets soft and slushy, you have no bite, you have no traction. It's like death defying to do this in the Sierra. Your butt's puckering, even with traction. Like, you're looking down at where you might be sliding into rocks or off a cliff. Like, the stakes are extremely high for every step. The low altitude aspect of hiking early season in the Sierra is, those river crossings, if you get to a river in the afternoon, it's raging, because that's like, just like I said, that snow up high is getting slushy and soft. Well, where does it run to? Straight down, funnels into all these creeks and rivers. You go over high mountain pass, what goes up must come down. You got to go down to a river before you start climbing the next mountain pass. And there's no way around these rivers. And a lot of these rivers have zero bridge, because like the bridges will never hold up in these rushing, snowmelt waters. They would just get rushed away and destroyed, because it's deadly. It's on. You honestly hear like almost every other year of someone who found themselves on the wrong side of one of these river crossings. And even if you got friends with you, it's still not a surefire, like, safety net. One wrong move, the blink of an eye, and you're downstream and fighting for your literal life, and you're just hoping to keep your head above water and being able to get your footing again, or grab onto something, whether it's a rock or a branch. The power of water is unbelievable.
I often get asked what my hardest day on the trail was, and this is the one I always say. So we were trying to get through the Sierras, and a lot of people consider Tahoe to be the end of the Sierras. And for us, it definitely was, because that's when our parents were joining us. So we felt like it was this extra we felt an extra push towards it. And the Sierras were tough. Like, we had a big snow year. We'd never walked on snow before, so everything was new.
We were quite early on in the season. I think like our trail family was maybe like the 5th or 6th group to go through the Sierras in that year. This made things quite hard for us to traverse the Sierras, because there was a lot of snow, but then there was also not a lot of boot packs, so then navigation became quite hard. And then on top of that, when we started to go through like the northern Sierras and more into Yosemite, the snow started to melt really fast, which meant that the rivers were just overflowing.
The morning was just spent post-holing, and Yosemite was supposed to be like so beautiful. We weren't even looking. We were just staring at the ground, like trying to get through the day. And the rivers were at their complete capacity. And I think we had 3 or 4 river crossings that day.
One of the guys we were with went first, and he just about managed it. And then I think Poppy went and she managed it. And then I started going, and yeah, the water just took me. I was submerged for maybe 3 seconds before I hit a bank, and then I got back up. And then stupidly, I walked back to the side where we were coming from. So then I still had to cross the river. So that was really dumb. The others sort of like made a like human chain, and like, so then I only had to walk half the way until I could grab Poppy's hand, and then they sort of like pulled me through.
Now Thea was soaking wet, which is dangerous in the Sierras when it gets so cold at night. So the decision was made to quickly find somewhere to put up camp. But before we could get there, we had another river to cross. And this next river was maybe 8 feet deep, so we couldn't walk across. And we ended up inflating my mattress and putting our bags on them to float them across, which seemed to work well until my mattress floated into a bush and got a puncture. And that puncture lasted the rest of the trail, pretty much, and like another 1,000 miles until I got a new mattress. So little did I know I was about to be sleeping on the floor for the next like 4 weeks. I just remember getting to the end of that day, and it was a tough day because of what had happened, but also we had just been arguing the whole day. We had like not been getting along at all. And we were so exhausted and just crying about how hard this all was. And I remember Thea saying, I just want to get on a plane and go home. The parents were going to be meeting us in 9 days. And we just ended the conversation saying, our parents have booked these flights. They've paid to come out and see us. we're going to go see them. We'll get 9 more days and we'll see them in South Lake Tahoe. And then if we still want to, we can get on a flight and go home.
When we got to South Lake Tahoe, we saw our parents, and that was so nice. I think it was exactly what we needed. Obviously, both of them like are very fit people, but they weren't hitting they couldn't hit the miles that we were hitting. So we did around 10 to 15 miles a day. This was their first time in America as well, and they were just in absolute awe of the scenery and the landscape, and they just kept saying I can't believe you guys have done this. I'm so proud of you. I think them experiencing the trail for the first time and voicing what we had been through made us both realize how lucky we were to be there.
Me and Thea are in a really lucky position of having very supportive parents. The way they approach adventures in their life was something that made us want to do the trail. So I think seeing them, seeing how excited they were for us, made us want to keep going.
One thing I got from talking with Poppy and Thea is just how much of an identity you create on these long through hikes. I mean, you come out a totally different person on the other end. And maybe that's why it's so common for hikers to give each other monikers or trail names, something to symbolize your persona that's totally apart from your normal civilian life. How and when you receive your trail name is often a tale within the tale. I asked Poppy, Thea, and Thomas how they got their trail names.
My trail name being Jabba, the antagonist, intergalactic crime lord from Star Wars. As we know him, he is an overweight, large creature, and that's basically what I was when I got into backpacking. I was an overweight, large creature, and I kind of still am to a degree. I fluctuate quite a bit, but my first week on the Appalachian Trail. So my one buddy, he was like, hey man, you shouldn't be eating all that. How are you going to lose any weight hiking down the trail? You'll be like Jabba the freaking Hutt. And then everybody around was just like, oh my God, Jabba. A funny thing with taking a trail name is you shouldn't name yourself. And if you do it, shame on you, but I get it, I suppose. But the beauty of taking on a trail name is that you get named something, and then you have to also accept that name. Well, this was the first name that I was even somebody even quote unquote bestowed upon me. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to take this name and I'm going to make it mine. And to this day, the name holds true to me in a lot of ways and what I am and what I've been. And to this day, I still have never met another Jabba on trail. And I love that the most.
So for most of the trail, me and Thea were just known as the twins. But later on, along the way, we did get our own trail names. My trail name was Big Pappy. I got it about 700 miles in when we'd just finished the desert section and we were coming onto the start of the Sierras. And we were all sort of celebrating with burgers. And we were at this restaurant where you went to order and gave them your name to call out when they were ready. And whenever mine was ready, the waiter came out singing the Big Popper song by the Notorious B.I.G. and calling me Big Pappy. And I guess that just sort of stuck. So mine was Tooth Fairy. It was maybe 5 or 6 weeks into the trip. I had bought some milk duds, which are these American sweets that I'd never heard of before. And I was chewing on them as we were hiking. And it was maybe 5 or 10 minutes into this when I started to chew on one of them. And it tasted really crunchy. And obviously milk duds are soft caramel. So I was like, what is going on? This tastes really weird. So I pulled out this wad of caramel from my mouth, and there was a big chunk of tooth in there. So basically the milk dud had suckered half of my tooth off of its root in my mouth. Yeah, it just pulled it in two.
safe to say that was the last milk dud I have ever eaten. And then when we got to the next town, I managed to get find reception, booked myself in an emergency dental appointment, and they fitted me with a crown, which was not cheap. And then, my face was all swollen and numb and curly. One of the guys we were hiking with christened me with the trail name Tooth Fairy because I lost my tooth. So yeah, and now I have a fake tooth all the way from Southern California. So that's my little souvenir from the trail that I carry with me everywhere I go.
On our toughest days, we cried together. We argued a lot and learnt when to keep anger at bay.
We peeled toenails off, popped blisters, regrazed scabbed knees again and again. We talked to each other about ways of walking, ways of approaching the trail, ways of keeping hunger at bay.
We got caught in wildfires, got ourselves out of evacuation zones. We crossed the Bridge of the Gods, where Cheryl Strayed finished her journey, and we were becoming confident we might finish ours.
We saw bears and coyotes. Marmots stole our clothes and ate the handles off our trekking poles. And I still cannot believe it.
On the 22nd of August 2024, Thea and I crossed the border from America to Canada to finish our hike.
I think in my life, I have always been quite a cautious person. Maybe lacking in that sort of self-confidence. That's why I've always looked up to Poppy as someone who I feel has an amazing attitude. But through the experience of the trail, I grew in self-confidence myself. Like I did that too. I completed that trail.
It taught me so much about sort of growing comfort zones and just expanding your comfort zone that little bit more each time. And I love that. Often thinking, if I can do this thing, maybe I can do the next thing. And that can be translated into medicine. I mean, that can be translated into life so easily, just gradually expanding your comfort zone like that. But I think just about I learn mostly about taking opportunities and making what I'm doing now into like whatever I really want it to be. So I can bring the outdoors into it.
I feel like it's just sort of opened up this like whole world of like long distance hikes that I didn't even know was a thing until we started researching the PCT. And yeah, we started looking at ones closer to home. So we're doing, the TMB, which is the Tour de Mont Blanc in July. And then hopefully in September, we might be doing another one in Europe as well, in the Balkans. Yeah. I feel like for a lot of outdoorsy people, sometimes it's challenging to find partners that are like of the same.
Yeah, they want the same things, same expectations for an adventure.
Yeah, but I have that with Poppy, and I feel very lucky that she will be up for it if I wanted to do something.
Yeah, it seems like a guarantee that Poppy will be up for it. I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Poppy will be up for it.
Thanks, Thea and Poppy and Thomas, aka Jabba, for talking with us. Jabba couldn't stay away, and he's back on the PCT, dashing his way through Washington as we speak. Our stories come from friends of friends, and from you, our community. If you have a compelling idea for a guest or story lead, please give us a shout. You can email us at editor@ducktapedandbeer. Thank you to everyone who has become a Diaries Plus member recently, and to those of you who continue to support the show. It is the difference between the show being here and not. You make this possible. You make this open access for the entire community. So thanks for shouldering that weight. Music today from Matthew D. Morgan, Brendan Burns, Canned, Boleen, and Brendan O'Connell. The tracks are courtesy of the artists or Track Club. Jacob Bain and Nis Cotto composed our theme song. You can find the links to the artists at our website, dirtbagdiaries.com. This episode was produced by Marco Seiler Gonzalez, with additional production help from Skylar Perwins. Illustration by Walker Call. Becca Call is our executive producer. I'm Fitz Call. You've been listening to Dirtbag Diaries. Thanks for tuning in.